on the graffiti of the car. And this is something that's pretty optional depending on your era. If you're working on a car that's made in like the 60s, or it's running in the 60s or the 70s or like the early 80s, you probably won't have a lot of graffiti and you can go ahead and just skip this step. But if you're early modeling anything in like the late 80s, the 90s, and anything past that, you're probably going to have some graffiti on your car for it to, kind of resemble anything modern. So we're really going to try and harp on that, and it looks pretty good. And it's definitely not as difficult as you can as it seems. So I would say there's two major types of graffiti. There's kind of the graffiti where you take the spray paint and you just kind of write your name in it in like cursive. You're not making bubble letters. You're not making cartoon characters. You're just kind of writing with the graffiti. And that's what we're really working on right here. So you can kind of see we're working on the left side of the car here, and we're not really even making words. That's the best part about this. We're just kind of, you'll make a straight up line, and then you'll kind of do like another cross line, and then you'll come back down. And in the end, you can't really read it. You can't really read real graffiti. And in the end, it looks pretty good because you just know someone wrote their name on it, or they drew like a little symbol, like a crown or something, and that you don't really know what it says, but you know someone tagged it. So that's what we're going for right here. You can kind of see we're just kind of making random lines around the car, and yeah. So to do this, really you just need to find the smallest paintbrush you possibly can. I believe this is either a 0 or a 00. It's definitely I bought a pack of like 10 small paintbrushes, and this is one of the smallest. So one of the downsides of doing this is that it kind of ruins the paintbrush. Even if you wash it and take good care of it, you only get 1 or 2 shots with this. So by the time you're on your third or second wash, the bristles kind of start fraying, and it's harder and harder to kind of get that nice fine tip. So I don't like doing this a lot, but it's definitely one way to do it. I know other people like to use like felt tip pens, and I don't really enjoy that because you kind of get a constant line, whereas with a paintbrush you can kind of see here, right? You got a thin line and then you got a thick line, and it definitely varies, whereas the felt tip pen is just definitely a thick constant line and all that. And it can look good, but I think that the paintbrush does look better, even though it's a little bit more work. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of zip through the rest of this. There's nothing especially too crazy about this. I can just kind of see right now I swapped over to the white here, and I would definitely recommend staying with the black, just because the black is a little bit, it's harsher, whereas the white, it doesn't go on as good. You might have to do it thicker in 1 or 2 passes, and it's a little bit more difficult. So definitely would stay with a darker color, your blacks, maybe a brown, maybe like a blue. But usually when they do this kind of cursive writing with a real harsh spray paint, they just use the black. So you definitely get the effect down with just the black paint and the small paintbrush, but other than that, you can also definitely try other colors. It just usually doesn't turn out as good, or you usually have to put more work into it. But alright, so we're going to go ahead and start the other type of graffiti, where this isn't more of the drawing, it's more of the bubble letters, more of the character drawing. So this is where you really see the full car art, where you see kind of the more classic drawing. So we're going to go ahead and use this Tamiya XF19 Sky Gray once again. And you can kind of see right to the right of the reporting marks where I kind of traced it out, and that's something I would definitely recommend. You definitely want to trace it out, kind of get where you're going, where you want to put your paint, and then you definitely want to use a prototype photo. I know not all of us are the most creative, and some of us can do this, but definitely for your first few, you'll want to create like or not create, but kind of find like a graffiti that's already done, just replicate it, especially because you'll tend to find that all your graffiti kind of looks the same. And I know that's what happened to me, is you think you can make a lot of crazy designs and crazy styles, but eventually they all kind of look the same. And you really want to look into other inspirations, other artists. So what we're going to go ahead and do here is we're just going to paint the background. And you can kind of see me going over the other type of graffiti. I kind of changed my mind here, and I thought this side would be used for graffiti on the right side, but I ended up liking the right side weathering so much that I used the bubble letters over here. But it's a good thing about graffiti is we can actually replicate people graffitiing over previous graffiti. But like I said, we're going to go ahead and do the background here, and then we're going to go back through and we're going to put in the black outline where we can actually read the words, read what it's saying. So you can kind of see here, you want to keep it as thin as possible. You see that rivet detail. We don't want to destroy that. And if you get the paint too blotchy, it doesn't look fake. It looks caked on and it doesn't look realistic. When you're looking at a real freight car, you know the paint it's very thin, and then when you scale that down, it's really difficult to keep the paint as flat as possible. So that's something you really want to work with. You want to keep your paint thin. You want to go in small strokes. You want to cover it with just enough, and you don't want to overstep it. You don't want to throw tons of paint on there. You want to keep it as light and as thin as possible. You also want to make sure, I think you can see right here, there's like a slight air bubble. You want to kind of make sure you're avoiding that. You want to make sure your work area is dust free and particle free as much as possible, because that'll get in the paint and it'll make it seem like there's like a huge dirt cloud on a model, and that's not what you're looking for. But we're going to go ahead and zip through the rest of this because we're just kind of filling in this outline I made with the pencil sketching. That's something I definitely recommend. That's something that will really help you. So just will also mention that we're painting around those they're like lumber boards or tack boards. So that's something that we're just matching off the prototype photo, like I said. So we'll go ahead and just get into this next part. Alright, so now that we got that background paint, we're actually going to go back through and we're going to actually use the pencil to draw on top of the paint that the background paint. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this. It's actually pretty interesting. There's nothing to it really, but you're just drawing on the paint itself. So we're going to go ahead and just stencil it out once again. And the only thing you really want to watch out for here is that if you put too much pressure on the pencil, you'll kind of start scraping away the paint, and that's not what you want to do. Or you'll have to move the paint over so that it's on line. It's just kind of, you'll get into a spot where you have to put more paint than you want to, and then if you want to fix it, you have to get the background paint out, and you really don't want to do that. So you want to put as little layers of paint as possible. So we want the background, and then we want, the outline. And you don't want to go back through, and if your outline's too thick, you don't want to put more background on, because then you start getting into 3 or 4 layers of paint, and that starts looking really thick, and it starts getting away from that realistic aspect. So once again, we're just using that Tamiya XF1 flat black. Nothing too crazy about it. I just enjoy it because it's a modeling paint that looks good. It's a little bit cheaper than Model Masters. I think it's only about $2 at my local shop, so you can definitely go through it, and it's something I always have on hand. If you don't have a flat black always on hand, you should probably invest in a few bottles, just because you're always using it for something. So once again, we're just going to go quickly through here, and we're just following this outline. And really the detail is in your preparation, so you want to be, you want to start doing good from the beginning. You want a good background, you want a good outline, and then you want a good tracing. And really that just all comes down to practice and time. And you really just want to, maybe go out and buy like a few pieces of cardstock and just practice your graffiti, or just practice your painting. I know another option is the decals, and I know that's getting pretty good, and I used to never like that, but that is something that if you don't feel comfortable using a small paintbrush, or you don't have the hand-eye coordination to do it, the decals do look good, and especially if you use them in the right spots with the right weathering, they can look really good, and sometimes they're even better than hand painting. So that's definitely something I would look at too, especially if you don't feel comfortable, or if you just don't want to deal with the hand painting. Definitely would use decals on like a picture. I think pictures is one of those things that it's very difficult to translate in scale, whereas a decal does pretty well. So we're going to go ahead and just fly through this one because it's just kind of a quick outline, and then we're going to go ahead and get into that next graffiti on the other side, which I think looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead and get started on that next one. Alright, so we're once again back on this other side, and I've already skipped through, I already did the background painting and I did the stenciling, and you can just see I just started once again with that flat black. So this one's actually going to have three colors. It's going to have the background gray, it's going to have that X1, you can see it right here, the black, and then it's also going to have a highlight color green, and we're just going to use that paint you saw earlier from Apple Barrel, and we're just going to pick out a random green one. So you can kind of see here, just using, not even dipping my paintbrush into the paint of the jar. I'm actually using the paint on the lid on the inside, and that really helps me control my paint. So you're not getting a super ton amount of paint, and you're keeping it nice and fine and good looking. So if you remember this graffiti, I think I showed it at the beginning of the prototype photos. And it was actually a two-part painting where there was graffiti on the left side of the door and the right side. And that's the thing I really like about actually doing my hand painting, is I can pick and choose what I want. So I really enjoyed the right side, but the left side I thought that was out of my skill reach, and I couldn't do it, and I couldn't get it to look right. So I just said, you know what, we'll just use the right side. You know, if you just saw, I think you can see it here, it says SOR, it's like soar. And if you just saw that on a car, you'd just be like, oh, or maybe it's 5 or something. And you just kind of, you go on your day, it's not something you would really think of, and it just looks good. So you can kind of pick what you want to do. I know there's some times where I've just written my name on it, on a graffiti, on like a side of a boxcar, and when it's going down the track, you don't really stop and look, and you know, you're not really reading it, and you just kind of, you just see the graffiti and you're like, oh wow, that's graffiti. So so there's not much else to talk about this one. I kind of harped about it already, so we're just going to kind of speed through this one. I don't think I recorded as much on this one. I just did the outline here. I think I did a little bit of details where I actually used like cracks in the letters, and that was something that on the prototype photo they used really thin cracks and it looked really good, and on mine I had to kind of make the cracks a little bit bigger. It's just something you have to kind of work with, and if I didn't like it, I could always just paint over it with the sky gray again, and that's something that you always can look into. And then the other thing I did not kind of touch on was the green outline. I don't think I got video of it, and I'll just show it kind of at the end of the video here. But just went around the background color, and I just kind of touched it up with this green, and that's something that you should really look into, is that the green makes it pop, whereas like a gray and a black, yeah, it looks nice, it's an easy color to do, but the green really makes it pop. And when you see a lot of these graffiti, it's not really a lot of dull colors, it's not a lot of, there's a lot of blacks and whites, but it's usually a lot of fluorescent colors, a lot of like in-your-face colors. So that's something you should look into. And like I said, I just use these craft paints. You just gotta be careful because they're a little bit thicker than the model paints, but you just gotta use less of it, or take some out, maybe thin it down just a little bit, but not so thin that's watery. But that kind of concludes it for the graffiti. It's kind of something optional. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. I ended up spending a ton of time on it, but kind of know what your skill level is and definitely practice, because it's something that's not super difficult, but you know, really takes a model from, you know, from a C to like a B or to an A. It really stands it out, makes it look good. So that's all I got to say about this. I'll just kind of run this out quickly so it kind of finishes up, but we'll get on to that next section.